So today we're going to draw the monopsony graph and actually explain what is a monopsonist. So essentially, a monopsonist is a firm that is the only buyer of a certain type of labour. And you may be thinking like, well, what does this actually mean? So I'm going to give you guys some examples to help your understanding of what this actually means. So our first example of a monopsonist would be the NHS. This is because the NHS are the largest employer of healthcare workers in the UK. They hire the highest percentage of nurses, doctors, etc. in the UK. So a second example to think about is teachers. Like most teachers, the vast majority of teachers are employed by the government. This means that the government is the main buyer of teachers. And same goes for the NHS. Like the NHS is the dominant buyer of healthcare workers in the UK. So before we get to drawing the actual graph, we need to understand three key terms. This is the average cost of labour, the marginal cost of labour, and what is MRPL. So the average cost of labour refers to the average cost of each worker. On a normal supply and demand diagram, this would also equal to your supply. Now, your average cost of labour is also equal to the worker's wages, and I'm going to explain why now. This is because your average cost of labour equals your total cost of labour divided by your quantity of workers. And your total cost of your workers is obviously just going to be your wage times your quantity of workers. Quantity of workers over quantity of workers cancels out, so that means your average cost of labour just equals your wage. Now let's look at the marginal cost of labour. So your marginal cost of labour is the additional cost of labour from hiring one additional worker. Finally, let's have a look at MRPL. So MRPL will look the same as your demand curve. So your MRPL refers to the extra revenue a firm will generate when it employs one additional worker. Now this can be calculated by MPP, so this is your marginal physical product of labour, times your MR, which stands for marginal revenue. So the MPPL, basically it just means the additional physical units produced when you employ one extra unit of labour. So it's saying if I'm an extra worker employed, how much additional units will be made when I'm employed. And the marginal revenue just means the additional revenue gained from each unit sold. So your MPPL is calculated by your change in total output over your change in quantity of labour. So imagine you're hired at McDonald's or Burger King or something like that, and you're hired and you bring 10 burgers. You make 10 burgers when you're employed, and then for each burger you earn £2 of revenue per burger. So to work out your MRPL, you would do 10 times 2, which is 20. You bring your MRPL is 20. Okay, so finally we're getting to draw the graph. So first of all, you're going to label your X and Y axes. So on the Y-axis, you have your wage, and on the X-axis, you have your quantity of labour. First of all, we're going to start by drawing demand, which is your MRPL. So it's downward sloping because as wages decrease, firms are willing to hire more workers. So now we're going to draw our average cost of labour. So it looks like this because as firms employ more workers, they have to increase their wages. This is because obviously if you're a firm and you want more workers, then it will be rational to increase wages to attract more workers. So for example, if a firm employs one worker and that worker earns £13 an hour for their wages, and they now want to employ 2 workers, they're going to have to increase the wage to £16 an hour in order for a second worker. Okay, now let's draw the marginal cost of labour, and if you notice, it is steeper than the average cost of labour. This is because as you increase the wages for average cost of labour, you can literally not just increase the wages for just one person, you have to increase it for everyone in order for it to be fair. So the marginal cost will be steeper and higher than the average cost of labour. Now, monopsonies want to maximize their revenue. So firms maximize their profits at where the MRPL meets marginal cost of labor. So this is essentially where the extra revenue a firm generates from employing you meets the extra cost of employing you. So in a monopsony, firms want the wages as low as they possibly can be. So they do this where your average costs equals your wages. However, in a perfectly competitive market, supply equals demand. There's many small buyers and sellers. So your wage is going to be where your MRPL meets the average costs of labor. Now, you may also notice that quantity monopsony deliberately employs less workers in order to keep the wages low. Now, this is why minimum wages are a thing. So, minimum wages ensures that people get paid their MRPL. People get paid what they're worth, so that their average cost of labor, their wages, is equal to the extra revenue that they bring to the firm.